Hi everyone, I've decided to make a tutorial for Blighttown skip because it's one of the most important skips in the current any percent route and there's no current tutorial for it. First I'll show you the full skip, how I do it currently, and then I'll go into greater detail about all the different parts of it. And I'll also add some timestamps so that you can look at the parts of the skip that you're struggling with. And this tutorial will only focus on the way you do the skip in the current any percent route. There are other ways of doing this skip, like for example in any percent no wrong warp, where you start as thief. You don't do the same setup for the elevator or for the air rolls. But like I said, this is for the current any percent route, starting as Pyromancer and using the Pyromancer armor. Okay, so let's look at the first part of the skip, so the elevator setup. Elevator setup, you want your equip load to be between 16.7 and 25%. So you want to be the slowest fast roll tier. First you run into this corner next to this white tile and get stuck in it. You want to make sure that you're stuck in the corner before you turn around. Once you're stuck in the corner, you want to start aiming with the bow. The visual cue that I use right here is that plus looking symbol. I align the top right corner of my crosshair with the right side of that symbol. After aiming at the right spot, you want to roll forward, but you want to avoid moving forward before the roll at all. So you want to flick the analog stick up and press B at the same time. Alternatively, if you have an extra arrow, so if you buy an extra arrow from the undead merchant, you can use the bow to do an animation cancel to make sure that you don't move forward before rolling. After the roll, I move my crosshair to the left and then move to the right on the elevator and then roll backwards. And then I walk a bit to the right on the elevator and do backsteps until I feel like I'm stuck in a corner. A visual cue for where I aim at the elevator are these black spots that I've circled. I align the top right corner of my crosshair with the smaller one and the bottom of my crosshair with the bigger one. And then after the elevator stops, you want to do a backstep against the wall and then immediately roll forward and do another backstep and then do a quitout. Then once you load back into the game, you want to do a slope quitout here. Now it's time for the part of the skip that can be different depending on where you land. Normally I land in the same spot, so it's almost always the exact same, but from time to time you land a bit closer or a bit further away from the wall and then you need to aim differently. The main visual cue for this part of the skip is these two black dots that you see here. You want the bottom right corner of your crosshair to align with the bottom dot. If the bottom part of your crosshair is on the same level as these dots, then you've landed in the normal spot, unless your camera is shaking. If you land in the normal spot, the aim isn't very precise though. You can aim pretty far left or pretty far right and still get it. If I don't land in the normal spot, then I use a different visual cue. This is an example from a recent run of mine. You can see here that my aim was lower than normal. I aligned the bottom right corner of my crosshair with the edge of that black dot that I had circled. Once you're aiming at the right spot, you want to do a backstep and roll backwards while still aiming with the bow. And you want to spam a roll forward in midair to avoid the stagger and then toggle escape the fall. And it's time for the Seamwalk part of the skip. This is probably the hardest part of the skip and also the hardest part to explain. You really need to practice this part a lot to get a better feeling for it. Once you get to the top of the broken wall, you want to run straight at the white spot that the arrow is pointing at. You also want to turn your camera so that you're running straight. With the way I hold my camera here, I start turning to the left once the neck of my character covers the white spot. I turn to the left very carefully just by moving my right analog stick and keeping my left analog stick straight. For this last part of the Seamwalk, you can see where you're supposed to run, so there are no visual cues necessary here. It's time for the air roll part of the skip, so the final part of the skip. To be able to do the air rolls, you need to have a very specific equip load, so there are different setups based on the amount of endurance you have. These are the most common setups. The one that's circled is the one that you currently use in any percent. So normally in any percent you have everything except the sword hilt equipped, and then once you reach the end of the seam you equip the sword hilt, wait a second so that your equip load updates, and then do the air rolls. The air rolls, there are two main setups, the 3 roll and the 4 roll setup. Currently I'm using the 3 roll setup. You want to stop at the end of the seam, so you want to stop right before the spot where the texture changes. You start walking down the slope, and you want to run backwards here, but not sprint. Once you reach the end of the slope, you want to do 2 rolls backwards and 1 roll forward. You also don't want to slide down to the left of the corner that you see here. If you can't do the air rolls, then it's because you didn't wait long enough after equipping the sword hilt. It takes a while for the equipment load to update. Now let's look at the 4 roll setup, which is the most common one used by other runners. For this setup, you first want to take a step forward and do the right, and then almost immediately start rolling in the same direction. You also want to be a bit further away from the end of the seam. Once you've gone past the slope, I usually start rolling straight. The main reason why I stopped using this setup is that you don't have a clear visual cue for it, and it also depends a lot on your positioning before you start rolling. My biggest issue when I died was that I landed too far to the right, and then I ended up rolling too early, so I would die because my iframes ran out before I landed. I hope this tutorial was useful for someone. Thanks for watching, everyone.